Yeah, because in fact there was a case like it goes back I think to the 30s. It's actually a Supreme Court case where there's a very eloquent discussion about how that used to be the law under ye olde English common law that you owned the ground up to the heavens. And the Supreme Court specifically says that we're not doing that anymore because otherwise it would be impossible to operate aircraft. That the airspace is going to be federal and it's going to be operated by the federal government. And in fact, there's a federal statute that gives the federal government sovereignty over the airspace of the United States. And there's no height limit on that statute. It's basically, the statute says the federal government controls from the ground all the way up to the sky. Now, you get into those really tricky questions sometimes about, well, if I own land, if I don't own at least some of the rights to use the space above the land, my land is useless.
How do I build a house?
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. 6 inches.
Well, there were some discussions early on about where does your property start? It's like the top of the blade of grass,
Well, the Supreme Court, there's a famous case, involving, I don't know if you want to get into it, but involving chickens right after World War II. It was a chicken farmer. And the Army at the time, because it was the Army Air Corps, they built a runway to operate large 4-engine bombers out of, and the flight path, the takeoff and landing path was right over this guy's farm where he kept chickens. And the noise and vibration from these bombers passing over at all hours of the day and night was so bad that basically the chickens would get so terrified that they would fly into the walls and they were literally killing themselves. And so this guy sued. The guy sued the government and said, "Look, I want an injunction there. This is my property, and you can't fly over it." And the Supreme Court kind of split the baby, and they said that as we were talking, ownership of the land obviously gives you an interest in the airspace of some kind. Otherwise, your land is useless. But the government still controls how the airspace is used. So if the government's use of your airspace is so invasive and so pervasive that the land has no value to you, it's no different than if they just took your land and built the runway on your property, that it's a taking at that point. And then they have to compensate you. So that's ultimately what they did to this guy. He couldn't stop the bombers, but basically the government had to buy him out and compensate him. Right. They treated it as a taking.